Hello everybody, welcome to our video for the May Aphasiatoolbox Newsletter. I've got the great privilege today of talking with Barbara Shadden, who's got some personal experience as well as professional experience in the area of aphasia, and in particular in identity, social personal identity. She had been on the faculty at University of Arkansas, on the board of directors of Aphasia Access, a very important thing we want to talk about. And so we're going to talk about how you work on the impact of identity of life with aphasia and after aphasia. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Great to be with you. I've not been in Arkansas. I got to get down there sometime.
It's pretty here.
I hear you. So what is this idea of identity, social, personal, how does that relate to us here?
Well, sometimes I wish we didn't have so many versions of it because identity can be many things. But when we talk about it, we talk usually about personal being, how you see yourself internally. This is what I say to someone, that's not like me. That's reflecting on my sense of my personal identity.
Okay.
And social identity can be how one is perceived by the world around you, but for our purposes today, I like to talk about it in terms of how the people around us, the people in our lives, perceive us. Basically.
So that brings more of the social identity into it.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about, aphasia impacts so much in a person's life. Talk to me about how it impacts identity, and I think you've even seen it personally.
Yeah, just so the viewers understand, my husband had a stroke in 1997 and was quite aphasic, and he struggled as he recovered, he struggled to get back his sense of who he was, and it took me years to figure out it was because other people didn't see him as who he used to be. That got me going, and I began looking into it and understanding it. So when we think about aphasia, you have to think, as you said, so many things change. So many things come along with the stroke or whatever caused it. And all those changes, they certainly reflect back on how we see ourselves and our ability to do things. But from the get-go, from the first medical crisis, they affect how other people see us. So we kind of adopt when we're first ill, we're the sick person, we can't help ourselves, we can't communicate with others about what we need or want or how we're feeling. It's scary for others to be around someone who can't talk, particularly someone who maybe used to be very, vivacious and popular or whatever.
Sure.
And after time, I think what happens is the aphasia really disrupts the tool we need to get our lives back, which is communication. So the way in which we craft our identity with others is to put forward bits and pieces of ourselves in our communicative interactions. And aphasia takes it away when we need it the most.
It reminds me, I have a client who, because of his apraxia, he gets loud. And Uber took away his right to take an Uber because the drivers complained because he got loud, and he wasn't aware of it. He wasn't aware of that part of his identity change, and he couldn't monitor that. So we're working on getting that back. So that having been said, what's your advice to people with aphasia and caregivers relative to these identity issues?
Well, I think as long as we keep in mind that everyone's experience is so very different, there's not one recipe for this one, but I think the most important thing is to be sensitive to the fact that, your life trajectory has changed. You don't know maybe yet where it's going. You know where it's coming from, so you have that identity. But one of the questions you have to ask yourself, and others have to ask themselves, is, am I trying to be the person I was before that identity? Or do I have a new identity that moves forward as I learn to live with the aphasia and move past its major impact? And if we're aware of that, and if we're aware of how we are sharing with others our sense of who we are, and if we're aware that others need to know things about us. If someone has a very severe aphasia, we need others to tell some of our stories so that they look at us with more understanding about the person, not just the stroke or the aphasia. So a lot of it's about awareness and about making sure the person hasn't funneled down to a person with aphasia and hasn't had all those other pieces chipped away.
So because of the life changes that aphasia's brought, you need to make some other changes. You're still you, yet
Yeah.
you know, it's just like when you retired from the University of
Right.
Arkansas, and you know, and you have a child, things change, and you change with it. And we need to, I think, look at it more in that normal perspective, maybe. So
Yeah.
okay, some of the resources out there for people with aphasia. I know you're with Aphasia Access, a wonderful, fairly new sort of thing.
Right.
Could you tell us how resources help this?
Well, I think first, well, let me talk to Aphasia Access first. I think that it has a website that is rich in information about what we call the life participation approach to aphasia, which is really tied into this identity stuff, because it's about how do we help people and how do we, as persons with aphasia, move forward in our lives as who we are with aphasia and fully participate. So the organization is all about supporting people with aphasia, caregivers, professionals, in making sure that the communication tool, which is fundamental to all of this, that tool is supported and that the world around the person with aphasia does what's right. So the website has a lot. We have a conference coming up on June 15th, and then online afterwards, a virtual conference, a first ever effort, which might be of real interest to some of the people who read this. And then I think another resource, apart from all the other aphasia resources that you cover so well, Bill, is just recognizing this idea of stories. I've had a number of my clients who wanted to do more with their life story. And we're beginning to see that for some people with aphasia, a facilitated process of doing that is a great idea. And there's some good resources online just to look into life story stuff.
So there's a lot of good stuff out there with supported conversation and
Absolutely.
and life's stuff with aphasia. So, well, that's
Right.
great. We've could go on for a lot longer, but people don't watch long videos anymore.
Of course.
But that's great, and I encourage everybody to visit the Aphasia Access website. And there,
Yes,
as you said, there's so many of our friends out there who are helping with these kinds of issues. We don't have time to mention them all. So I hope that we can dedicate one of our newsletters to the Aphasia Access in particular. Well, thanks
We
a
would
lot.
enjoy that, yeah.
Thanks a lot, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.